Hi, this is Carrie Stein, executive producer of To the Contrary. I'm here with Genevieve Wood of the Daily Signal. Hi, Genevieve.
Hey, Carrie.
Thank you for joining us on this day. Today was the last day of the session for this Supreme Court, and they announced the decision to strike down a Texas law that imposed significant restrictions on abortion clinics. The abortion access law was struck down in a 5-3 ruling, which is pretty significant because Justice Kennedy joined with the liberal justices. And this has been a decision that we've been waiting for. Generally, what is your reaction to it, Genevieve?
Well, I think it was the bad decision by the Supreme Court, Carrie, because I think, this is one of those cases where whether you were pro-life or pro-abortion, this was just common sense legislation that the state legislature in Texas had passed, saying, not saying you can't have abortions, but saying abortion clinics needed to meet the same standards, same sanitation standards and health standards as other ambulatory clinic centers. So if you're going in to have invasive surgery, then you ought to be able to be in a clinic that meets certain standards. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court said, no, that puts too much pressure on abortion clinics. And I would say they basically decided that the abortion industry was more important, abortion profits, than women's health, because this was frankly about protecting women's health.
I believe that one of the things that they said was it was undue. It was an undue burden, not on the abortion clinics, but for the women who would be affected by it.
Well, but the burden shouldn't be on women. It should be on the abortion clinics who are providing abortion services. Look, if you go in and have a colonoscopy or liposuction for that matter, very similar in terms of the level of invasive surgery, sometimes things don't go right and you have a medical emergency. Well, in the state of Texas, if you're having a colonoscopy, you've got to go to a clinic that has those types of medical services. In case an emergency happens, the doctor has admitting privileges to a hospital, that it has hallways that are big enough to get a stretcher in if somebody has to be taken out in an emergency situation. Why wouldn't abortion clinics have to meet those same standards? Whether you're having a chemical abortion or a surgical abortion, sometimes things don't go right. And a woman's health is in danger if they're in a place they can't get medical attention very quickly. And that's what this was about.
Well, what do you think of the fact that Justice Kennedy joined forces with the liberal justices on this?
Well, it's very disappointing. It's not the first time Justice Kennedy has been a disappointment to conservatives. Look, I was hoping that this would be a 4-4 ruling, being Justice Kennedy would have decided with Justice Thomas and others. And what that would have done is said the state of Texas and the Fifth Circuit, so the other states involved in that, it can stand there. Then this case would probably, or one similar to it, would have come back that would have dealt with the larger, all 50 states, if you will. But again, I think this really basically put the interest of the abortion lobby and their profit over the lives of women. I mean, even Planned Parenthood, who obviously is a supporter of abortion rights, has said that over 200, and that was a conservative number, over 200 women a year in Texas that have abortions need to have emergency services. Well, if you're a woman at one of these clinics that can't meet that level of expertise, that's very unfortunate for you. And I just don't understand why, as a country, we regulate a lot of things. We regulate tanning salons, we regulate many veterinarian clinics. Why on earth would we not regulate a clinic and say, you've got to meet certain standards that make sure women are safe that walk through these doors?
Well, I just got off of a call with the people who are on the other side. They just did a big media call where they were saying, obviously, they're elated, and that this is really, what this has done is taken the issue that was really a political issue and made it into a medical issue, which was not, and this put it back into the right setting, that this is a political issue. That's why these laws were put into effect, and it was not about medicine and about good medicine.
No, this was the state of Texas saying we don't want a Kermit Gosnell type of abortion clinic in the state of Texas. For people who aren't familiar with Kermit Gosnell, I encourage you to Google his name. He was an abortion provider in the state of Pennsylvania in the Philadelphia area, whose clinic was so filthy, and women died in his clinic.
Truly, right. That was truly a horrible case.
It was a horrible case.
I think nobody would disagree with that.
But
what do you think this means politically for the election?
Well, let me just finish this point, Carrie, which is I think states not only should have the right, they have the moral obligation to make sure that kind of horror system or horror clinic isn't going on in their state. And in places like Houston, there have been clinics there that have also been found to be not sanitary, not meeting certain standards, but they weren't regulated. So yes, this will become a political issue because people, when they go into the voting booth, should be thinking about, okay, who is going to both stand up for women's health, but also appoint judges that are also will stand up for women's health. So I think this was a case about women's health, but it's become political because of what we saw the court do.
So do you see this as being used in, does this become something that is even that on for the conservatives that they can use and say, here's why this is an important issue for you to go out and vote, even if you're not really thrilled with who the presidential candidate is?
Yeah, well, I actually made that very point at the Supreme Court this morning. I was speaking at a press conference and I said, look, you've got a couple choices here come November. And I think there's one candidate that's much more likely to appoint judges who will change the direction of what we saw the court do this morning. So if you're pro-life, if you're conservative, if you care about women's health, I think you have to look at today's ruling and say we need to make some changes, and the future of the court will be important in that.
Genevieve, I have one more question for you. The call that I got off of, they were saying that this was one wonderful decision for that side, but the battle is not over, and they feel that this is definitely not an issue that is falling away anytime soon.
Well, I think they're right on that. I think that both sides can agree. I think you are going to see similar cases like this come up before the court. You're going to see, look, states want to make sure that their citizens are protected, and they should have the right to do so. They should have the right to say, if you're doing medical procedures in our state, you have to meet certain standards. And why abortion clinics should be given a free pass and not be forced to have meet the same sanitation standards and health standards as other types of clinics that do invasive surgeries. I don't understand why that's allowed. The state of Texas didn't want to allow it. The Supreme Court said basically you have to. They're giving the abortion industry a pass. I think many Americans, when this case is put before them and they're explained just what it was about, you have huge numbers saying that they took the side, the opposite side of what the Supreme Court did this morning. So yeah, I think you're going to see it come back.
Whatever happened? You remember there was a whole group called Common Cause where it was safe but rare.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You hear a lot of candidates and politicians talking about we want abortion to be safe and rare, but that's what today was about making sure that if you're going to have an abortion, you're going to be in a safe place to do it. And I would argue that the Supreme Court just ruled against ensuring that it was going to be safe. They basically said abortion clinics can regulate themselves. And I think that's a real problem when you've got a for-profit industry involved here. And let's keep in mind, abortion clinics are for-profit clinics in most cases. So they're about making money. I'm not saying it's the only reason they're there, but it's one of the reasons that they're there. And the fact that they get to, again, produce or do medical procedures without having to meet certain standards like others do, I think is a very bad day for women.
Genevieve, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you back on To the Contrary really soon. You're one of our favorite panelists. So thank you very much again.
Well,
and you
thank
have a
you
great
for
day.
covering this issue. Thank you.
Okay.